Got ourselves a new Mac here. Little Joe's MacBook Air from 2013 finally died, so I'm going to walk through the setup of how I set up a brand new Mac. All I did is turn it on. This is a new MacBook Air. It's got quad-core processor, 8 gigs of RAM, 512 gigabytes of hard drive space. And I'm just going to walk through exactly how I set up. First, we're going to choose English and let it do its thing. Choose where we're at, country-wise. Choose our Wi-Fi. Go ahead and I'll put that in. Type in the password. I'll be right back. All right, got the password in. It's connecting. And here we are on data and privacy. That's fine. And the way that I do it is I'm not transferring any information to the Mac because her stuff is stored primarily in iCloud. But if we did have to restore, I would select from a Time Machine backup. And Time Machine is a wonderful tool on the Macs where you can go through and connect an external drive whenever you're using your laptop at a certain desk. And it automatically detects it, backs up. It tries to back up like a couple times a day. And it has revisions, so you can roll back to certain times and so on. So on all my computers, all my Macs, I have a Time Machine that I usually have going, meaning that it's a drive that I can restore from just in case the laptop died or got stolen or something like that. But for now, we're going to say don't transfer any information. And now we're going to sign in with our Apple ID, and I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll be right back. All right, finally got through that. Had a little bit of a wait because I had to get Josie to provide a code that was sent to her. Terms and conditions. Agree to that. And then create the computer account. I'm going to go ahead and do this. This is just, for me, I use Linux and Unix, so I make the account name my same username for those, but 99.9% of people don't even know what I'm talking about, so that's not really a worry. And I'm going to do this and I'll be right back. All right, now we're into setting up iCloud. It's going through and getting all of the accounts synced for all the different ways we use iCloud. So here's the Find My Mac option. And basically this is really powerful in the way that if your laptop's gone, you can send it a directive to essentially remotely lock or erase it, presuming that whoever steals it in a worst case scenario goes through and turns it on, gets on a Wi-Fi. Usually that does happen. So I always turn that on, make sure it's enabled. And let's go into customize settings for setup, just in case. I do enable location services for Mac because that's part of the Find My Mac solution. I do share everything with analytics because it helps the developers make things better. And then screen time. This is just the normal situation with Apple nowadays. It reports out how you're using your devices to help you limit if that's something you want to do. Do enable Ask Siri if you like to talk to your computer. And we'll set the Hey Siri up later because this is actually Josie's computer. In terms of sharing auto recordings, I say no because that could be a privacy violation. And I'm just not real comfortable with what it's sharing and what it isn't, and whether it's recording or not. Now, I do not store files in the iCloud. I do not store photos and videos in the iCloud. And the reason is because two parts. One, I'm still old school in the sense that I like to have things locally, and I do my storing of everything in Dropbox for the things that I can put out there. I'm just concerned about, again, privacy data being stored out in documents and desktop and iCloud Drive. Once it's out there, as secure as it can be, people can still get access to it. Store photos and videos. I prefer to have that stuff locally. I have a good mechanism for how I keep that backed up, and then how I change out my photo library about every 2 years. And if you want more information on that, just let me know. But if you want to store photos in iCloud, it makes it really great for being able to access all your photos from all your devices. I do that now through PhotoStream, which is a baby version of this concept of storing photos in the cloud. And if you want to learn more about PhotoStream, just go ahead and search for it. Because this laptop will not be used out and about, typically we're going to not turn on disk encryption. It does slow things down a little bit with your computer, and I'm kind of a speed freak that way. So I did have it on a Mac or two in my history, but my Macs generally don't leave me. Like, I'm not out in public, especially with what's going on in the world. So we're going to turn that off and continue. And then the Touch ID piece, I'll go through, I'll set me up, and then I'll set Josie up when she comes over to get her laptop. It just is a matter of doing what it tells you to do here. and then moving around. And you can have multiple fingers stored so multiple people can get into the computer. And you can delete the fingers that are stored too. So if somebody you've set up with finger access, you don't want them to have access anymore, you can remove that. And it takes care of that. Apple Pay we'll set up later. And it's a mechanism so you can just buy things with pressing your finger on the Touch ID. Let's see here. There is an actual card in here. So we're just going to do set up later. We're going to choose the light look. Josie can customize that later on. And True Tone Display, I do leave that on. Enhances the visual experience. And it sets everything up. That's the walkthrough of the opening sequence. Now we're into the Mac. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to a screen view where I actually walk through setting this up at a screen level rather than me doing it this way. Also, the updates did come up, and I always make sure to install all the latest updates. Since the Mac was built and loaded, there's probably a few updates that have come in, so I'm going to do that right now. Then I'll come back and you'll see me walk through setting it up, tweaking the system, if you will, and my thoughts on that.
As soon as we got through the install, which I did on the camera, as you saw, now we're into the actual Mac. I'm just recording the screen through QuickTime, which is built right into all Macs, QuickTime Player. And I hit File, New Screen Recording. Over here you can see that it's in record mode. As soon as I'm done, I'll press that button. The first thing that I do, typically I work from this list, and I've added a little bit to it for our work today. The first thing that I do is assure that I tell anybody who's got a Mac to use Command, which is the key left to the space bar, and Space to load up any programs instead of going down and clicking. I'm a keyboard guy, so keyboard shortcuts are everything. So for example, if I wanted to use QuickTime Pro, I could do Quick or QuickTime Player and then hit Enter. And then boom, it loads it. I'm already in it. If I wanted to use Pages, which is the word processor built on Macs, I would do Pages and then press Enter, and it would load up Pages. Any applications that way, if I go to Mail, I do that. Calendar, it's just CAL. And it's just a simple keystroke, Command Spacebar. That being said, let's go ahead and tweak the dock, and that's down here. So what I typically do, this is completely your preference, is make sure that I get rid of things that I just don't need, like FaceTime. I can get to that through Command Space, Messages, same story. So the things that I typically use, you just hold it out here and it will automatically remove, or you can click to remove. Maps, I barely ever use that. On here, I usually use Google Maps. Photos, on my personal computer, I keep that. So for her, this is Josie's computer, I'll keep it. Contacts, I just do that and type contacts when I need it, but usually the contacts are sensitive to whatever app I'm in, like for emails and so on. So I don't usually have that on mine. I'm going to leave that for her. Calendar, I'll leave. Reminders, I'll leave. Notes, I'll leave. Music, podcasts, TV, news, and then these are numbers, which is like Excel. Keynote, which is like PowerPoint. I use Keynote for all my work, have for the last, since 2008, so 12 years. And then Pages is like word processing, except it's word processing on steroids in the sense that you can create, back in the day there was a MS Publishing, Microsoft Publishing, where you can create boxes and shade boxes and do all that real easy. Once you get over the small learning curve with Pages, it's amazing. And I usually leave App Store and System Preferences. I personally don't like to have this, which is basically showing the most recent apps or the open apps that are going on separately. And then here are access to file folders. So my preference is to turn these off. You can leave them on. And my preference is to make those folders instead of little like images of what those actually are. I'm going to show you how I do that. So for starters, I'm going to do it the long way. You go to here, System Preferences, and then we go to Dock. And then I'm going to tell it, do not show most recent. So those disappear. And the ones that are open are showing up down here. Just so you know, if I close this, it will disappear from the dock. If I want to keep it in the dock even when it's closed, you can click the right button and go to Keep in Dock. So that's always an option. You can also have it automatically open that program as soon as you turn on your computer or log in. And then over here, Text Edit, same story. If I want to keep Text Edit, which is like a notepad, like a text editor notepad, if you want to keep it in a dock, you just do that, keep in dock, and it will be there even when you close it. Otherwise, when it closes, these two, because they're not set to keep in dock, will disappear. So that all being said, that's one change that I'm going to make. And let me see if there's anything else in here. automatically hide and show the dock. I always turn that on so that I just have to go down and it will appear. Gives me more real estate screen space when I'm doing video editing, stuff like that. Works out real well. That's pretty much everything here. Since we're in system preferences, a couple of gotchas in terms of the way Macs come by default. And the first one is with the touchpad or trackpad. I always turn on tap to click. So you don't have to click down, you just have to tap once. And like to do that, what I just did, I didn't have to press down and make a click. I just tapped, just tapped my finger up and down and it was there. And then in the keyboard, this is something I still can't believe they set up where it's set this way. Under shortcuts, is use keyboard navigation to move focus between controls. I always check that box. Keyboard shortcuts, use keyboard navigation. And the reason for that is because if you're ever on a website and you're filling out a form and you hit tab on your keyboard, if you're a keyboard person like I am, to go through it, it'll skip certain fields, like radio buttons. And it drives me nuts. And I'm glad they had this option because it was almost a deal breaker back in 2007 or 8 for me using a Mac because I'm so keyboard oriented. Like I couldn't figure out why they would turn that off or not make that a default setting. So I always do that. Those are the two biggies in terms of what I set up on every Mac I ever touch. Trackpad, tap to click, and keyboard shortcuts, and then making sure that that keyboard navigation is on. Now, I personally like to have multiple screens, and they're called they're screens. And you can do that on your Mac. There's F3, which is, I think that they have an application. Let me show you in the applications here, which we'll set that up in just a minute for it. So that you'll know what I'm talking about when you see it. It's the launch pad. I think it's the launch pad. Let me double check. Nope, that's not it. The launch pad. Let me see. Oh, mission control is what it's called. So the button is F3, and if you hit it, it does this. And at the very top, there's desktops. So I always set up 2 desktops. Or on my computer, I have like more than that. So if I'm in the middle of working on a project, along the lines of what I teach in high performance, full focus on a specific project, I can go to another desktop and I can change, let me show you this, change the background on the desktops so that I can differentiate them. I have different logos for my different companies. But on this desktop, we're going to use the desert rock, and that's there. And then we go over to the next desktop, is that. So again, you can see the desktops here, and here's the different desktops. Now inside, this is for power users, inside settings, preferences, keyboard, we'll pop over there to keyboard. You now can turn on keyboard shortcuts to move between the desktops, these 2 checkboxes, to move right or left, and to switch to desktop 1 and 2. So it's control and right or left arrow moves between the desktops, or control 1 and 2. So I'm going to go ahead and do control 2. It moves to desktop 2, control 1, and then control right arrow, control left arrow. So for example, if I'm doing some searching over here on Safari, let's say that I'm in Google and I'm deep in a research, and then I get a piece of email and I have email set to open up in window 1 or desktop 1. It's compartmentalized and it helps me really focus. The other thing I want to make sure of is that up here is where all the notifications and so on happen. If you hold Option, that's between Control and Command by the space bar, and you hit that, it turns those off. And you can set D&D modes for that too. And it's so powerful in terms of what we teach in high performance. And I believe it's down here in this little settings box, is to, turn on D&D so these things just don't pop up all the time with notifications diverting your attention. I usually have it set, I think it's from, during the business day, I have D&D on, actually, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., because I want to make sure I'm full focus with no interruptions. But if you want to turn it off and on, it's Option, and you just press the button up here, and you see it highlighted, or dark, it's on, and dim, it's off. And that's just for notifications that'll appear in the upper right corner, like, hey, you just got a piece of email, or there's an announcement, or some sort of notification with an app. You can turn that off and on. Works out really well. So back to tweaking the dock. I think we've covered that. I have it hide. Oh, and what I want to make sure of is on these, the way that I usually set up my Macs is I go through in here. If you go to where it says Recents and you hold Command and press that. Actually, let's do it this way. Go to Desktop, do Command and press Desktop, you'll see the home directory for your username. And in that is a folder for documents. And I love to have the documents folder here where I store all my pages, documents, stuff like that. And I have downloads here. And what I also love is to have, go to the Macintosh hard drive. I love to have the applications down here. And so here's the way it works for me. I change this so it's a list. That's automatic actually. But it's a folder, display as folder. So you see how down here it displays it as a folder. I want to display that as a folder. And then I want to display this, let me get in there, as a folder. And then I want this to display as a list. And this to display as a list. And then this one to display as a grid or automatic. This is what a grid looks like. It's got all icons for everything. And it's a great way to get into any applications if you need them. Documents. Now there isn't any documents in there, but if there were, you'd see them in a little list format here. And then downloads, that's how it looks. I did a quick screen record with my QC25s to test it, and that's that file that's in here before I did this video. So now I've configured this. If I have Dropbox installed, which is something I do put in, I got to add it to my list here, because I use Dropbox for my primary file share. I'll add that icon over here, and then have all my major incoming, outgoing, where I store my files. Real handy on the dock, works out real well. Trash you can remove or empty by right-clicking and then emptying the trash. Works out great. So I think that's everything that I wanted to cover in tweaking the dock. Now the common programs that I install, and I'm going to update my list, are Chrome, Firefox, Amphetamine, Evernote, Dropbox, Text Expander, 1Password. Oh, I already have Chrome and Firefox in there. Parallels, Final Cut, and VLC for viewing any kind of video. So let me walk you through. The easiest way to install things, by the way, is just go either to the Mac App Store, down here. So that's how we'll get Amphetamine. And I'll just show you how that works out real quick. If I can spell amphetamine. And there it is. What this does is it produces a little button up here that you can click on to keep your Mac awake. So if I'm extracting video or in a long haul compression of video for my video work, I'll use that to make sure the Mac stays awake the entire time. And now we should have it installed. Or yep, there it is, Amphetamine. And you'll see when I open it, the first time it goes through quite a bit of dialogue, and it tells you what it does and so on. But this is what it has. If it's this way, it's not enabled. If you turn it this way and start a new session indefinitely, now the Mac will not go to sleep. And that's a critical thing for me when I'm doing exports of videos in iMovie, or if I'm compressing them with a tool called Handbrake. I make sure the Mac is locked on for that. And that just makes sure, I got that covered. That takes care of that. That's why I use Amphetamine. Now over here, we have that installed, so we can X that. Evernote, I don't know if Josie wants that, but you would go to the Mac App Store, install that. Dropbox, I usually do that. I don't know if it's in the Mac App Store, but I usually do that through their website. So let's just see if Dropbox is in here. The kind of rule that I have is try to go into the Mac App Store first. If it's not in there, then go to the website of the manufacturer. And the reason for that is, at least with the bigger tools, there's a safety and security to them. But the Mac App Store, to be in that, there's a whole set of rules and regulations they have to follow, if you will, to make sure that they're in there. So I download Dropbox by, usually the way I do it is getdropbox.com. And that takes you right to the download of it. Used to take you right to the download of it. So I just get, I guess, Dropbox Basic. And somewhere in here you can just download it. I must have changed this a little bit. Try Dropbox for free. And download the app. There it is. So in the upper right, download the app. And then it will download. Yes, I want to allow it. And then it puts it in the downloads directory. And when I'm done, I'll click on the download installer and install Dropbox. Now, I'm not 100% sure that Josie wants Dropbox installed, so I'm not going to install it. But that's the common mechanism for installing programs. Now, let me walk you through Chrome, Firefox. I use those because we test websites and we have to test them on all browsers. And Chrome runs a little faster than Safari, I found, and Firefox runs really fast. And it has a whole layer of security to it, which I really like. but I'm using them for different projects and to view websites on different things. Amphetamine, I just told you. Evernote, the note-taking app. Dropbox, the file-sharing app. Text Expander is a tool I use so that if I want to fill out something, I don't have it installed on this computer, but if I type, for example, EM with a semicolon in front of it, it automatically replaces that with my email address, Charlie at yahoo.com in that regard. There is a way to do that in the Mac without using Text Expander, and that's through keyboard shortcuts. And I'm trying to remember where that is. So shortcuts. Let's see here. Keyboard. Yeah, I'm trying to think of how I used to do that. Oh, here it is under text. So you would do this, and you could do EM, and then replace it with Charlie CA at Yahoo. And this works on iPhones and iPads as well. So now if I type EM, it automatically replaces that with that. You want to just make sure that you know that because you'll be typing stuff and all of a sudden you might replace words that you don't mean to, stuff like that. But keyboard text shortcuts is another way to use a text expander type situation, which saves so much time over the long term. 1Password I use to store all my passwords. I love it because it is not cloud-based. I'm very skeptical, personally, just because I know the back end of security on the internet, of tools that are cloud-based that store passwords. If you've ever worked or read any of Edward Snowden's stuff, once it's in the cloud, supercomputers can hack them. You know what that does. Maybe I'm a little paranoid. I use Parallels and Parallels Toolbox, and you'll see in my video, in my trainings actually, that I'm using full-blown Windows as a separate desktop. And the way that I can run a full-blown version of Windows is through that beautiful tool. Parallels, there's another tool called VMware. I've tested it. VMware, from what I've tested, I haven't tested it in the latest versions, but VMware for the Mac is a little clunkier. Seems like a little harder to use. Parallels, basically you download the free trial, you install Parallels. It says, do you want to install Windows? It installs Windows. Both Parallels and Windows have trial periods, so you can run full-blown Parallels with Microsoft Windows 10.0 for Windows 10 is like 30 days, and Parallels is like 14 days. And that works out great for running full-blown Windows on your Mac, and you can get everything in there and sync its Microsoft ecosystem, all the OneNote and your documents with OneDrive and all that can be synced, and you're running off one Mac, both things. I would recommend, if you're going to be doing that work, that you have at least 16 gigs of RAM, and that in Parallels you can tell it use 6 to 8 gigs for Windows and use 8 for mine. You can also set it up so when you turn your computer on, Parallels automatically fires up and Windows automatically fires up, although you never really need to turn a Mac off because you can just shut it and it goes to sleep. Another side note, now I'm thinking about it, is the fact that when you're doing a Mac and you shut it and you have it plugged in, you can connect external monitors and external wireless or wired and wireless or wired mouse, and then you just tap a key on the keyboard and it will automatically wake up the monitor with the Mac being closed. That's called closed book mode. And that's how I use my Mac, if you saw it in my training video, in a video that I did for my mastery community and my business internet mastery training, that that's how I use it with 3 big monitors for a full setup for doing my major trading, major video work, learning mode, all these kinds of things. And that's a total reality with the Mac. That being said, let's go ahead and get back to our list and see if there's anything else I wanted to cover here. Tweaking the menu bar and loading the tools we've covered, tweaking the dock. Okay, so tweaking the menu bar up here. Starting from the right, Siri's okay. There's the Finder that you can get, or the Spotlight, by doing Command Space, same story. And then in the time, I always like to see the day and the date. So in here, I just go to Clock, and I turn on Show Date and Show Day of the Week. So we have Tuesday, September 8th, 3 o'clock, and it's all up there. And I love to have that information, so I'll close that. Over here, I like to see the percentage, so I'm going to turn on Show the Percentage in the Energy Saver part. Wi-Fi is fine. I don't usually have this on. This is the keyboard preferences. It shows you what your source keyboard type is. So I just turn off Show Input Menu and Bar in Menu Bar. And then this is for if you have Apple TVs or an iPad, you can use the iPad as a second display screen, and you'll see it here. It'll be the name of your iPad. You click it, and it automatically uses it on your as a second screen, like just automatically through Wi-Fi. Very, very powerful. And I can share the screen or make the monitors that have Apple TVs, the TVs that are connected to the Apple TVs in my home studio and all that. I can make them second monitors and then just play stuff to them and so on through this little display hoo-ha, which is amazing. And then for me, I always set up Time Machine. So really, really powerful. This tool right here, Time Machine, I always have that set up here. And I just recommend getting a drive that's bigger than the total drive space you have. So for this particular Mac, if we go in here, it says Mac OS Catalina. It's got 8 gigs of RAM. It's got storage-wise, I think it's 500 gigs of flash storage. So I'd want to get at least a terabyte external drive. Those are like 60, 70 bucks. And anytime my Mac's on my main desk, plug it in. And Time Machine, once it detects it, it will automatically back it up. Snapshot backups. So you can restore like your latest backup, or you can restore a file from 2 weeks ago by going through the Time Machine setup. Very mandatory. If you take your laptop out, it gets stolen or falls off your car or gets lost, you can grab another exact Mac, pop it in, plug in Time Machine, turn on your Mac, go through as I showed you in the beginning, and say restore my Mac from a Time Machine backup, and you're literally back in business within an hour or less. It's just absolutely amazing from the way it sets itself up. Up here on my computer, I also have 1Password. I have Text Expander. I have Dropbox. I have Evernote. And these are some of the other things that show up in the menu bar. And those things are helpful as well. So I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover in terms of how to really efficiently use your Mac and set it up. If you have any questions, just let me know, and I'll be more than happy to answer. Take care. Have a good